Hello and welcome to Constellation Station. I work for the Cincinnati Observatory. My name is Nicole, and at the Cincinnati Observatory we like to connect you guys with the stars. So we decided to make a series called Constellation Station. And here at the Constellation Station we're going to do a few things. We are going to learn about constellations. Every week we're going to bring you a new constellation and talk to you guys about it, and maybe you'll learn something. Number two, we're going to talk to you about where these constellations are up in the night sky. Constellations are connect the dot pictures we make out of stars, and we can actually find them up in the night sky by finding the stars and using our imaginations to connect them up in the sky. And then third, we want to bring the constellations home to you. Once you learn about the constellations and learn where to find them in the night sky, you will have the tools to be able to make them in your own home. You can make your own constellation station. You can make your own constellation crafts. Really whatever you want to do to be creative, use your imagination, and learn a little bit about constellations yourself. So today we're going to start with a very special constellation called Orion. And once we get started with Orion, you're going to learn really quickly that constellations take a lot of imagination. We have to use our imagination to connect the dots and picture what our constellation is supposed to be. Our constellation today is a mighty and brave hunter, and I know you can see that in the stars that we have here. You can't? You know what? Actually, I can't really either. This constellation takes a lot of imagination, and to help with our imaginations, people like to make up stories about constellations. So Mr. Orion here is famous in Greek mythology for being a mighty hunter. So we're going to connect the dots, and we can maybe learn a little bit about this mighty hunter and be able to use our imaginations and picture him a little bit better. So to make my constellation station, I have a black sheet as my background. I cut out stars out of construction paper, and to connect the dots, I'm going to use some string that I found around my house. This is usually a clothesline, but I've cut it up into pieces to help us connect the dots of Orion. So Orion starts at the tippy top with this little white star as his head. So we're going to start by connecting this white star to just a little bit down, and I want you guys to use your imagination that this blue star right here is actually Orion's shoulder. So now we'll go ahead and connect Orion's shoulder right here. And we can see how his shoulder is connected up to his head. And we'll get to these stars here in just a second. So hopefully you can start to picture, you can picture his head and his shoulder right there. Orion is usually pictured, we have his head, his shoulder, and then his arm over his head like this, with his right arm, usually holding a sword or a club, and this arm has a shield in front of it. So right now we have Orion's head and his shoulder. Next we want to go down to his neck star, which comes down from his head to about right here. That's right. This is a very silly star, and it goes in a silly place. So this star is Betelgeuse. Very silly name, I know, but Betelgeuse literally means the armpit of the one. And Orion is the one. It's his armpit that our star is in, and it's this really big red star right here. So we're going to connect Orion's head down to his shoulder. So now hopefully we can see Orion coming together a little bit. Now some of you may already recognize Orion. You may have heard of Orion before, and he's really famous for this next part of his body that we're going to talk about. It's his belt. He's really, really famous for his belt. You may have heard of Orion's belt before, and it's these three stars right here. So we're going to go ahead and connect those three stars. Connect his shoulder down there, and then we see his belt stars connect just like this. So now we pretty much have the top half of Orion done. We have his head, we have his armpit, his shoulder, and now his belt. So we start, hopefully with our imaginations, can see Orion kind of like this up in the night sky. So Orion was said to have been stung by a scorpion, and he was saved by the god Zeus, one of the gods in ancient Greece, by sending him up in the sky. So we want to go ahead and connect the lower part of his body. Maybe we can see him as a real mighty hunter worthy of the reward of being a constellation. So first we have connecting his belt to, that's about his knee, though we can imagine that being his whole leg, and a connection finally down to Orion's foot. And this is a very special star down there called Rigel, and Rigel is a big blue star. So next I want to talk about the differences between the stars that I have up here. So you can see that Orion is made up out of small stars, medium-sized stars, and really big stars. Stars really do have different sizes out in outer space. Some of you may know that our star is kind of a small medium star. So it's not really big, it's not really small, it's just kind of medium, which is perfect for us. It's just the right distance and just the right size that we can have life on Earth. So it's really special that it's just that right size for us. And Orion is made out of stars of all different shapes. Stars that are much bigger than us, stars that are about our same size, and stars that are just a little bit smaller. You may also notice that we have different colored stars. We have white, red, and blue. And we did that because those stars really are that color. I wanted to make the stars the same color as they actually are in outer space. So blue stars are really hot stars. Usually here on Earth we think of blue as being cold, but blue stars are actually the hottest stars in outer space at millions of degrees. And then white stars are right in the middle. Some of them are millions of degrees. For example, our star is sort of a white yellow star. So our sun at its very core is still millions of degrees. But by the time we get out to the edge of the sun, it's a little bit cooler at only thousands of degrees, tens of thousands of degrees. And then we have red stars, which are much cooler. They're only maybe thousands of degrees instead of millions of degrees. So they can still be really big, but they're just not as hot. And that's actually what's going to happen to our star one day. It's not going to be quite as hot, but it's going to get really big. It's going to be really red. So I wanted to use our different colored stars, different sizes of stars, to represent what these stars really are like in outer space. And that's what's so great about constellations. You can learn about silly stories like a hunter being stung by a scorpion and being sent up into the night sky as a constellation. And you can also learn a little bit about the stars themselves and the different qualities that they have. So the best part about constellations is that we can actually go and experience them ourselves. So I want to challenge all of you guys to be able to find Orion up in the night sky. If you go out sometime this month to go out and find Orion, you'll see him slowly going over the horizon in the southwest. It's between southwest and west, and you'll be able to find him. He'll be a little bit on his side, but he'll still be holding his sword and holding his shield. And the way that you will find him is by this right here, Orion's belt. You want to make sure that you find Orion's belt out in the night sky. It's really easy to find. It's 3 stars right in a row. You would think with how many stars we see out in the night sky that we'd see 3 stars in a row all the time, but actually it's kind of rare. So you should be able to see 3 really bright stars in a row, and then that'll help you find the head, the shoulder, and the armpit, and our 2 bottom stars, bright blue stars at the bottom, like his feet and his knees. So you should be able to find him around 9 o'clock, 9:30 in the southwestern sky. He's only going to be around for a little bit longer, so you definitely don't want to miss it. He's only really around in the winter and early spring. So the last thing I want to talk about is making constellations in your home. I want to remind you the materials that I use today to make my constellation station. So I made my constellation station with a black bed sheet, construction paper stars, and clothesline to connect my dots. But you could use anything that you have around the house. You don't need to use construction paper. You don't even have to use the same color of stars. You can maybe cut stars out of a magazine. You can find whatever string you have in your house or anything else that maybe you can use to connect the dots. The important thing is that you use your imagination. And you can maybe make a constellation of Orion, or you can look up in the night sky and maybe see a constellation of a taco, or of your little brother. You can make up a constellation out of anything you want. The only thing you need is your imagination. If you want any ideas, definitely reach out to us and we can give you ideas of different constellations to make or different materials to use. And we want to hear from you guys. Share with us the constellations that you're making and just give us the hashtag Constellation Station so we can see your beautiful constellations and share it with everyone in our networks. So feel free to share with us on Facebook. On Facebook, we are at Cincinnati Observatory Center, and on Instagram, we are Cincinnati Observatory. Please subscribe to our channel, and we hope to see you guys next week.